The twin suns of Aureolus Prime burned across the horizon, flooding the alien world with golden light. The planet was famous across the galaxy for one thing: the endurance trials. Every cycle, species from distant star systems gathered to test their bodies and minds against challenges designed to crush even the strongest warriors. The trials were not about war or violence. They were about survival, persistence, and sheer willpower. The arena was vast, a mixture of desert plains, jagged mountains, and artificial labyrinths crafted by alien engineers. To the galaxy, this was not only a competition, but a cultural celebration. Victors earned respect, honor, and sometimes treaties for their people. Most races respected the trials. Some feared them, but none ever expected much from humans. They were still considered a young species in the galactic community, latecomers compared to the ancient civilizations. Humans were shorter-lived, less physically advanced, and lacked the specialized biology that many other races had evolved over millennia. To many, they were intriguing curiosities, clever but weak, creatures who relied on machines more than muscle. And yet, when Captain Rylan Carter and his small human crew walked into the grand Hall of Challengers, heads turned. Lysera of the Valari stood among the spectators, her emerald eyes narrowing as she watched the humans. She was young by her people's standards, curious and skeptical. The Valari were tall, graceful beings with skin that shimmered faintly under light, adapted to high-gravity worlds. To her, humans seemed fragile, their frames compact, their movements unremarkable. Humans? She whispered to her friend beside her. Why would they even attempt the trials? They will fail before the first stage is complete. Her companion laughed softly. Perhaps they come to entertain us with their defeat. But Lysera was not laughing. She watched as Captain Rylan spoke with the alien officials, his voice calm and steady. There was something in the way he carried himself, not arrogance, not recklessness, but determination. It unsettled her, though she could not explain why. The opening ceremony began. Thousands of alien voices filled the air in a chorus of anticipation. Spectators filled the towering seats carved into the cliffsides, their colors and shapes blending into a living rainbow. The trials were sacred, and every species brought their best to prove themselves. The announcer, a multi-armed Sarathi elder, raised his voice. Today, champions of 23 species will enter the first challenge, the Path of Stone. They will climb the Rift of Korin, a wall of jagged rock stretching 5 kilometers into the sky. No rest points, no machines, no assistance. Only strength and endurance will determine survival. The crowd cheered. Lysera felt her pulse quicken. She had seen this challenge many times. The Koran Rift defeated most after a single attempt. The climb was brutal, unending, designed to drain stamina and test resolve. Few reached the top, and those who did often collapsed for hours afterward. She glanced toward the humans. Captain, Rylan tightened the straps of his climbing gear, nothing more than rope and hooks. His crew, 2 men and 1 woman, stood at his side. None of them looked nervous. Instead, they looked ready. The starting gong thundered, and the challengers surged forward. The alien species attacked the wall with practiced techniques. The Varuk used their forearms to cling like insects. The Lithari, with claws like chisels, tore their way upward. The Sarathi, with powerful suction pads, slid smoothly across the rocks. The humans, however, climbed with only raw strength and grit. Lysera leaned forward in her seat, studying their progress. At first, she was certain they would fail. Their movements were slower, less efficient than others. Their fingers gripped edges that seemed too narrow. Their muscles strained visibly. And yet, they did not stop. Minutes turned into an hour. Aliens began to slip, falling onto safety nets below, disqualified. The crowd roared with each failure, but the humans kept climbing. Sweat dripped down Rylan's face as the suns beat down. His arms trembled, his legs ached, but he never let go. Each time his grip faltered, he forced himself to adjust, to continue. His crew mirrored him, pushing through pain with quiet determination. Lysera blinked in disbelief. Impossible, she whispered. They should have fallen already. No being climbs that long without rest. Her friend chuckled. Do not be fooled. They will collapse soon. It is only stubbornness. But something gnawed at Lysera's thoughts. Was it really only stubbornness? Halfway up the rift, many challengers had withdrawn. The Valari had fallen. The mighty Varrock had given up, their extra arms trembling from exhaustion. Even the Lithari with their claws were slowing. And still, the humans climbed. Captain Ryland's breathing grew ragged, but his eyes burned with focus. He called out to his crew, encouraging them, reminding them of their rhythm. Left foot, right hand, breathe. Again. Don't think of the top. Just think of the next step. Those words echoed through Lysera's ears. It was not just physical strength. It was strategy, mindset, willpower. He guided his team like a single heartbeat, never letting despair enter. By the time the humans reached the final stretch, the crowd had fallen silent. Only 2 challengers remained, a Lithari warrior, claws scraping desperately against stone, and Captain Ryland with his crew. The Lithari slipped, letting out a cry as he fell into the nets below. Gasps rippled through the audience. All eyes turned. Upward, the humans were still climbing. Lysera's chest tightened as she watched them pull themselves over the final edge, collapsing on the rocky surface. Their bodies shook with exhaustion, but their hands gripped the ground in triumph. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. The humans have conquered the Koran Rift. For a moment there was silence. Then a roar of disbelief and astonishment surged from the spectators. Species who once mocked the humans now stared in awe. Lysera's hands trembled as she gripped the railing. Her lips parted in shock. They did it, without stopping. 3 times they almost fell, and 3 times they kept going. Her words carried a tone of awe she had never expected. Her friend shook his head, bewildered. No creature should endure like that. Their muscles should have failed. Their spirits should have broken. But Lysera could not take her eyes off Captain Ryland as he stood, helping his crew rise to their feet. His gaze swept the crowd, not with arrogance but with quiet pride. In that instant, Lysera understood something her people had never considered. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They had no claws, no wings, no armor. But they had something else. Something dangerous, something extraordinary. They had the will to keep going, even when every law of nature said they should fall. And for the first time, in her life, Lysera felt a spark of admiration, and perhaps fear. The impossible had just become reality. The suns had already set on Aurealis Prime, but the light of the alien arena still glowed bright. Thousands of beings lingered even after the first challenge ended. The humans' climb had become the only subject of conversation. Whispers passed between alien spectators in dozens of languages. They should have fallen. No species survives that climb without resting. What kind of strange endurance do these humans have? Lysera of the Valari listened, her own thoughts tangled in confusion. She had seen the impossible with her own eyes. Captain Ryland and his crew had not only survived the Koran Rift, they had conquered it without once stopping. It was something no alien had achieved in generations. She found herself replaying the moment in her mind, the way Ryland's hand had slipped, the gasp from the crowd, and then, instead of falling, his hand gripping tighter, his body forcing itself upward. It was not just strength, it was something deeper, but the trials were not over. The climb was only the first stage. Ahead lay the test that had broken countless champions, the endless march. The next morning, the announcer's voice thundered again across the arena. Challengers of the trials, prepare for the second test, the March of Desolation, across 30 kilometers of barren desert under twin suns. You must walk. No shade, no water provided, no rest permitted until the finish line. Endurance alone will decide who remains. A low murmur spread through the competitors. Even the strongest species dreaded this stage. Heat and exhaustion were silent killers, and many never crossed the finish. Lysera leaned forward from her seat among the spectators. She wanted to see how the humans would fare. Were they lucky in the first challenge, or were they truly something different? Down on the sands, Captain Ryland stood with his crew. His face was calm, though his clothes were worn from the climb. He glanced at his team: Marcus, a broad-shouldered engineer; Lyra, the quick-thinking medic; and Jonah, the youngest, whose spirit burned bright despite fatigue. "Remember," Ryland said firmly, his voice steady, "we don't need to be faster than them. We just need to keep moving, step after step. That's all." The others nodded, determination flashing in their tired eyes. The gong sounded and the march began. The desert stretched endlessly before them. Twin suns blazed overhead, turning the sand into a furnace. Winds whipped hot dust into the air, stinging eyes and throats. Alien challengers surged forward in bursts of speed. The Varrock, with their wide feet, pounded across the sand quickly. The Sarathi slid smoothly, their limbs carrying them effortlessly. Even the Lithari sprinted with surprising speed, their claws digging into the sand for grip. But the humans did not run. They set into a steady pace, one step after another, conserving energy. The twin moons of Borealis Prime shone silver over the desert, casting pale light across the endurance camp. The second trial had ended, but the echoes of it still lingered. Everywhere in the camps, alien competitors whispered about the humans. Some spoke in admiration. "Did you see them? They walked the whole way without stopping." Others spoke in disbelief. "It is a trick. It must be. No body can take that much heat." And still others spoke with unease. If humans can endure this, what else are they capable of? Among the listeners was Lysera of the Volari. She had returned to her people's encampment, but her thoughts were not with her kin. They were with the humans. She remembered every step they had taken, every time one of them nearly fell yet rose again. It was as though something in them refused to break. Her people were proud of their strength, their long limbs and powerful muscles. But even the Volari had failed the march of desolation. The humans, fragile-looking as they were, had succeeded, and, now, the third trial awaited. The next morning came quickly. The air was sharp with anticipation as the remaining competitors gathered at the foot of the trial's next stage. The arena had shifted overnight, revealing a vast network of twisting stone corridors shadowed and silent. The announcer's voice boomed. "Challengers, the third test awaits, the Maze of Shadows." The crowd hushed. The maze was infamous. It was not only a test of strength, but of mind and spirit. Inside, competitors faced darkness, shifting paths, and illusions meant to break their focus. It was said that more challengers quit here than in any other trial. "The rules are simple," the announcer continued. "Find the exit before the moon set, but beware. The maze shows not only stone but what lies within yourselves." A ripple of unease spread among the competitors. Muscles and stamina meant little here. The maze attacked weakness of the mind. Lysera felt her chest tighten. Her people had legends about this maze. Some who entered were never the same again. She glanced toward the humans. Captain Ryland Carter stood at the front of his crew, calm as ever. His face was worn from exhaustion, but his eyes burned steady. His crew looked equally weary, yet their shoulders remained square. Lysera whispered under her breath, "Can they endure this too?" The gong struck, and the challengers entered the maze. Instantly, the world changed. The stone corridors swallowed them, the air heavy with silence. Torches burned dimly, their flames bending strangely, as though the maze itself twisted light. The Lithari warrior hissed, baring his claws. "Illusions," he growled. "Tricks of the mind." Ryland's voice was calm. "Stay close," he told his team. "No matter what you see, trust each other. Trust what's real." They moved forward, steps echoing against stone. The maze shifted around them, passages twisting, walls sliding, turning straight paths into Dead ends. Whispers filled the air, voices from nowhere, calling names, taunting. Jonah, the youngest human, stiffened. Did you hear that? My mother's voice. It's not real, Rylan said firmly. His hand gripped Jonah's shoulder. The maze wants you to doubt. Keep walking. Lysra watched from the viewing chamber high above, where alien spectators observed through holoscreens. She saw the challengers scatter across the maze. The Varrock roared in frustration, smashing into walls that seemed to multiply endlessly. A Sarathi curled into themselves, unable to bear the voices echoing in their ears, and then she saw the humans. They moved slowly, carefully but always forward. The maze played its tricks. It showed Jonah a desert storm, sand burying him alive. He stumbled, choking, until Rylan's steady voice cut through. Look at me. It's not real. Breathe. Step. It showed Marcus a canyon wall collapsing, rocks crashing down. He raised his arms to shield himself. But when he blinked, there was nothing. Rylan's voice again. Ignore it. Keep moving. And to Lyra, it whispered fears of failure, her friends abandoning her, her strength not enough. Tears filled her eyes, but she pressed forward because she heard Rylan and Jonah behind her. Lysra's hands trembled as she watched. Other competitors were breaking, screaming, clawing at walls, collapsing in despair. Yet the humans, they resisted, not because they were immune, but because they refused to give in. She whispered, they fight illusions the same way they fight the desert, one step at a time. Hours passed. The moons drifted lower. The maze grew crueler. For Rylan, the illusions struck deeper. He saw flashes of earth, cities burning, people screaming. He saw his crew lying lifeless on the ground. He saw his own failures, magnified, twisted into weapons against him. His chest ached, his mind begged him to stop. But he clenched his fists and forced himself forward. His voice cracked as he spoke to his team, but the strength remained. We are together. That is real. Everything else is lies. His crew nodded, their eyes red with exhaustion, but they followed. Lysra leaned forward, her breath quick. She had never seen such stubbornness. Her people would have called it madness, to keep going even when every sense screamed at them to quit. But to humans it seemed natural. At last the exit loomed ahead, a towering arch of black stone. Only a handful of competitors had reached it. Most had quit, curled in corners of the maze, waiting to be retrieved by drones. The Lithari warrior crawled out, his claws shaking. A Sarathi stumbled forward, weeping, and then the humans emerged. They were pale, trembling, their eyes haunted by what they had seen, yet their steps were steady. They did not collapse at the arch. They stood tall. The crowd erupted into shouts and cries of disbelief. The humans have broken the maze, the announcer declared. Lysra's heart thundered. She rose to her feet, her hands gripping the railing. She had thought the climb was chance. She had thought the march was luck. But now, seeing them conquer the maze of shadows, she knew it was neither. It was something else. They should have broken, she whispered. No one walks through the maze without breaking. And yet, they kept moving. Her friend beside her shook his head, whispering, 3 times I thought they would stop, and 3 times they refused. It should not be possible. Lysra's gaze locked on Rylan as he lifted his head, sweat dripping, eyes blazing with fire. For the briefest moment, she felt as though he looked directly at her, again. And in that look, she saw no pride, no arrogance, only the quiet certainty of someone who knew what it meant to suffer and still rise. And in that moment, Lysra felt something shift within her. Admiration, respect, and a seed of fear. For if humans could endure illusions, deserts, and climbs that no alien could, what else might they endure? The trials were far from over, and Lysra realized she was no longer just a spectator. She was a witness to something the galaxy had never seen before. Humans were breaking the alien limits, and the galaxy would never be the same. The sun rose slowly over Borealis Prime, casting soft light across the trial grounds. The humans had survived the first 3 challenges: the Koran Rift, the March of Desolation, and the Maze of Shadows. Each trial had tested strength, endurance, and mind, yet they had conquered all. For Lysera of the Valerie, the night had been restless. She could not stop thinking about the humans. She replayed the moments over and over. Rylan lifting Jonah after he almost collapsed in the desert. Lyra stepping forward despite the illusions of the maze. Marcus forcing himself to climb when his arms trembled. Her admiration had grown into curiosity, and her curiosity had grown into something deeper, a desire to understand why humans endured where aliens failed. The aliens in the arena spoke in hushed tones. "It cannot be just muscle or stamina," one whispered. "It must be some special, human biology." Lysera shook her head. "No," she murmured. "It is something else. Something... will." Captain Rylan and his crew rested in the shade of a small outcrop, tending to minor injuries and drinking what little water was allowed. They were exhausted, but the exhaustion was tempered by purpose. Each had felt the pull to give up. Each had felt the pain of near defeat, yet each had continued. Jonah sat cross-legged, rubbing his sore legs. "I don't know how we made it," he admitted. His voice was quiet, almost afraid to speak. Rylan smiled gently. "You made it because you refused to stop. Not because you were stronger than anyone else, not because the path was easy. Because you wanted to finish, that is all it takes." Lyra tilted her head. "But it felt impossible." Rylan nodded. "That's the point. Nothing worth achieving is ever easy." Humans have learned something important. The mind decides limits long before the body does. And if the mind refuses to quit, the body will follow. Marcus leaned back, eyes closing. "So it's not our strength, it's... willpower?" "Exactly," Rylan said. "Strength alone never lasts, but willpower can carry you further than anyone expects." High above the humans, Lysera listened to a recording of the conversation. She had managed to discreetly tune in with the device used for observing the trials. Her green eyes widened. Could it really be so simple? She had assumed humans had some hidden ability, a secret energy or a mutation. But no, it was not that. It was something alien species often ignored: purpose and determination. Her thoughts drifted back to her own people. Valari were graceful, strong, and long-lived. But often they relied on calculations, on natural advantage, on the predictability of biology. They rarely tested themselves beyond what was necessary. Humans, she realized, did not give themselves limits. They created them, and then refused to obey them. Lysera's pulse quickened. "They are extraordinary," she whispered. Later, the aliens convened in a council to... The morning air on Borealis Prime was crisp and charged with anticipation. The previous trials had pushed the humans to their limits: the climb, the desert march, and the maze of shadows. Yet somehow Captain Rylan Carter and his team had emerged unbroken every time. Each feat had shocked the galaxy, and now the 4th trial loomed, promising to test not only strength and endurance, but teamwork, strategy, and adaptability. Lysera of the Valari sat in the observation stands, unable to stop thinking about the humans. Their resilience had begun to alter the way she saw them. They were not simply lucky or biologically special. They had a spirit she could not fully understand, a will that defied logic. The announcer's voice echoed across the arena, reverberating against the high walls. "Challengers, the next stage is the trial of elements. Across treacherous terrain filled with fire, water, and wind, you must reach the central pillar. Cooperation, strategy, and careful observation will decide success. May the strongest and wisest prevail." A hush fell over the crowd. The trial of elements was notorious. Many seasoned competitors had fallen here because they underestimated the environment or overestimated themselves. Lysera leaned forward, her hands gripping the railing. She felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. She wanted to see how the humans would respond. The humans gathered at the starting line, surveying the challenge. Lava pits bubbled ahead. Torrents of water threatened to sweep them away, and fierce gusts of wind whipped debris across the terrain. Jonah frowned, biting his lip. It looks impossible. Rylan gave him a calm smile. Nothing is impossible if we work together. Stick to the plan, trust each other, and one step at a time, we will get through it. Lyra adjusted her gear and nodded. We've come this far. This is just another challenge. Marcus cracked a grin. I think we can handle it. We've survived worse. Rylan's voice was steady, a beacon in the chaos around them. Then let's begin. The gong sounded. Immediately, chaos erupted. Alien competitors lunged forward with their natural abilities. Varric charged with heavy strides, using brute strength to leap across obstacles. Sarathi skated across water flows with precision. Lithari scrambled nimbly along rocks and debris. The humans, however, moved differently. They assessed the terrain first, studied patterns, and relied on careful timing. Every move was coordinated. Rylan signaling, Lyra scouting ahead, Marcus assisting with heavy objects, and Jonah moving swiftly but safely. Lysera watched, her heart pounding. The humans seemed slower, yet their progress was steady, deliberate, and remarkably effective. They're different, she whispered. They're not trying to overpower the environment. They're working with it. Her friend beside her scoffed. It won't last. They'll tire too soon. But Lysera could not take her eyes off them. She sensed something beyond endurance, a subtle brilliance in strategy and adaptation. The first obstacle, a wide chasm with unstable bridges, tested every competitor. The Lithari leaped with ease, landing gracefully while others stumbled or refused to cross. Rylan studied the bridges, noting weak points. Take it slow. Marcus first, he said. I'll stabilize the bridge as you step. Lyra, guide Jonah behind you. The humans moved in perfect coordination. Each step was measured, deliberate. They adapted to shifting bridges, sudden gusts of wind, and falling debris. They were not the fastest, but they were precise, and they reached the far side with minimal energy wasted. Lysera gasped. Even the bridges, they adapt. It's not just endurance, it's their minds. Her friend muttered in disbelief. No species moves like that. No one thinks that clearly under stress. Lysera ignored him. Her eyes remained fixed on the humans, learning, observing, understanding. The next section of the trial was a river of molten lava, with narrow stepping stones and bursts of smoke. Many alien competitors froze, fearing the heat. Others tried to sprint across, only to falter and fall back. Rylan crouched at the edge, scanning each stone. Observe the rhythm of the smoke and heat, he instructed. Step lightly, move together. Timing is everything. Marcus led first, carefully adjusting his balance as Lyra followed, steadying Jonah. Rylan crossed last, ensuring no one stumbled. Lysera's heart raced. She had seen some aliens fall into the lava during practice, yet these humans crossed unharmed. They did not rely on speed or luck. They relied on observation, understanding, and mutual support. It was a style of endurance she had never seen before. Halfway through the trial, a sudden storm of wind and debris struck. Loose rocks and swirling dust made visibility nearly impossible. Competitors panicked. Varric shouted. Lithari hissed. Sarathi whirled, all scrambling. Rylan raised his voice, steady as ever. Stick close, move as one, don't panic. His crew responded instantly. They formed a line, shielding one another, moving in unison. Marcus blocked falling debris. Lyra guided Jonah with verbal cues. Rylan led from the front, analyzing patterns of wind gusts and predicting the safest path. Lysera pressed her hand to her mouth. She could not believe it. Other competitors faltered, some collapsing in fear, yet the humans pressed forward, unbroken and unshakable. They're teaching each other, protecting each other, she whispered. It's more than endurance, it's courage and trust. Her friend shook his head. Even so, it shouldn't work. The storm should break them. But it did not. As they approached the final obstacle, the central pillar stood tall amidst a chasm. The last challenge was a vertical climb, slick with mist and shaking slightly from artificial forces. Most alien competitors gave up at the sight, gasping and retreating. Rylan looked at his crew, nodding. Together. We can do this. Step by step, they climbed. Each handhold was tested before placing weight, each footstep carefully balanced. Jonah's arm shook, but he looked to Lyra, who encouraged him. Marcus adjusted their lines when a rock shifted. Rylan's eyes scanned for danger, guiding each movement. Lysera's chest pounded. She had watched countless species attempt the pillar, but none moved with such calm precision under pressure. And then, they reached the top. The crowd erupted into cheers, whistles, and cries of astonishment. The humans had done the impossible again. Lysera felt a thrill of awe. They did it. Again. Every obstacle, every test, they refused to fail. Her friend muttered, "No species should withstand this. No one else would. It shouldn't be possible." Lysera's gaze remained fixed on Rylan. Despite exhaustion, his stance was proud but humble. He had not shouted, not boasted, not demanded recognition. He had simply endured and led. For Lysera, the meaning was clear. It was not just physical strength that made humans remarkable. It was their will, their mind, and their unbroken spirit. And in that moment, she realized something deeper. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries. Strength could be measured, speed could be observed, but willpower, that could not be calculated. That could not be predicted, and humans had more of it than any alien could imagine. As the humans descended from the pillar, other competitors looked on with mixed emotions, awe, fear, and grudging respect. Even the judges whispered among themselves, recording notes that would surely rewrite what was known about endurance and determination. Lysera descended to meet them. She approached cautiously, unsure if she should speak. Rylan noticed her, giving a polite nod. "You are extraordinary," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I have never seen beings endure like this. How do you do it?" Rylan smiled, gentle and sincere. "It is not about how strong we are. It is about why we continue. We endure because we choose to, because we care about each other, about our mission, about seeing it through. That is all it takes." Lysera nodded slowly. She understood. Not strength. Not biology, not luck. Choice. Purpose. Will. She realized that humans' greatest weapon was not physical. It was internal, unmeasurable, and unstoppable. Their determination, and with that realization, she understood one truth above all. The humans had changed the galaxy's view forever. The trials were far from over. The final stage awaited. And Lysera knew that what came next could redefine what all species believed possible. But for now, the humans had conquered yet another impossible challenge, and the galaxy had taken notice. The final day of the trials dawned over Orcs Prime, casting soft golden light across the arena. The humans had already conquered 4 of the most grueling challenges the galaxy had ever created: the Corin Rift, the March of Desolation, the Maze of Shadows, and the Trial of Elements. Each had tested them to the edge of human endurance, yet they had persisted unbroken. Whispers and murmurs filled the arena. Spectators from countless worlds had gathered, eager to see if humans could complete the final stage, the pinnacle of resolve. It was said to be the ultimate test, combining all previous trials: endurance, strategy, teamwork, and the ability to withstand the unexpected. No species had ever completed it. Lysera of the Valari sat among the crowd, her green eyes wide. She had watched the humans rise each time the galaxy expected them to fail. She had doubted them at first, wondered if it was luck. But now, she knew there was something extraordinary at work. Something that no calculation or formula could explain. "They will succeed," she whispered to herself. They must. Captain Rylan and his team gathered at the base of the pinnacle. The towering structure loomed before them, jagged rocks, swirling winds, and shifting platforms rising high into the sky. It seemed impossible. Even seasoned aliens who had attempted the challenge B